Today we are reviewing an Australian whiskey from Starward Distillery in Melbourne. It's called Starward Unexpeated. Stay tuned. Hello, it's Rock. I'm here in the Whiskey Library, coming to you from the Whiskey Library, and I'm doing a whiskey review today for MyBottleShop.com. And what we're trying out today is a new Starward Unexpeated, which I guess is a play on the words unexpected. And this is a new release that they've just brought out, supposedly a limited edition released. It's 48%. Says on the bottle here that it was filled in 2007 and bottled in 2021. Now, normally Starward do their wine barrel finished whiskies, and this is their first peated expression. And they've had a few, I would say, limited releases or limited edition releases recently. They did the Octaves, which I've got down here recently. That was finished in the Yalumba Octavius barrels. That's a big, heavy duty whiskey, which I think we'll do on a separate review, actually, to be honest. Now, the Unexpeated is essentially, and I'll just read out the label in the back in a minute, but it's basically the Starward Nova finished with a peat finish. And I'll just read what it says here on the back label. It's I suppose, whiskey characters. It points out as peach, smoke, and cacao, which is interesting enough. Unexpeated is a collision of the old world and the new. Distillers source peated, whiskey-soaked barrels from the island of Islay of Scotland's west coast and filled to the brim with the, I suppose, a Nova red wine finish whiskey. Now, it's interesting that they've gone to Scotland to get the peat because, there's obviously no peat in Melbourne, as they point out here, right? Fully matured in Melbourne without a peaty whiskey bog in sight. But there are peat bogs in Tasmania, so it's interesting they've gone out to Scotland to get that, peaty finish. So what we're going to do is give this a bit of a crack open and see if it lives up to this name or this character that they've outlined. And I suppose if you think about it, there's not a huge history of doing peaty whiskies in Australia. There has been a few different players that have done it across the board, and I know more and more players are looking at doing the peat bog. We've had some from Kempton. There's been some smoky ones. Hobart Whiskey, Lark has done a bit of smoky or light smoke influence, but these guys are really, it's the first time they've really gone out and done it. And normally the Nova is a very sweet whiskey. It's a lovely whiskey, one of my favourites. Now we'll just have a look. I'll just pour this in my whiskey glass. We'll have a look at the colour we get there, the first thing. Let's hold that up to the camera there. And I'll first say that it's a really copper colour. That's what I would say straight out. I'm just seeing it reflect off the light there. It's almost a deep copper colour, which again is unusual for that Starward, because it is finished in those red wine barrels. If you look at your Nova that I have here, when you pour that into the glass, you might even be able to pick that up on the camera. It's got that sort of real red tinge to it from the red wine barrels. It's a lovely tinge. But this one's a little bit more, I'd say, a lot more copper. Now let's have a smell of this on the nose. I'd say, I mentioned before about the cacao. The first thing I get there is that little bit of a chocolate, almost a nutty coffee bean sort of flavour on the nose there. I expected to pick up a bit more of the peat influence. But to be honest with you, I can't pick that up. So I don't know. I don't know the nature of, whether they've just had peat whiskey soaked barrels and that they've refilled that. In which case, it's not like the barley has been dried out using, the peat smoke. So that would give it, a Lagavulin, Kalila, Ardbeg type smoke flavour. So on the nose, it's nothing like that. I definitely get that stone fruit. little bit of sweetness on there as well. So a little bit of stone fruit, a little bit of sweetness on the nose. Now let's give it a bit of a taste there and see what the flavours are like. Well, there you go. So the first thing I would say is it's I mean, it's a high proof at 48%. It packs a punch. I will say that. So first thing there, I've got that heat of that 48% on that whiskey. I mean, that's really hot there. Now, I don't have any water, but I just might put a couple of drops of water in there, just to basically just to add a bit of, bring out a few of those flavours on there as well. Let's just tame that. No, probably, I don't mind with the Australian whiskies, even when I'm sipping it, just put a small ice cube in there, you know, just in my freezer. I have some small ice cubes and I just put a little bit of ice cube in there. It's quite warm in here in our whiskey library at the moment. I've got the fireplace going over there, so I like the whiskies a little bit cooler, just to bring out a bit more of the flavour, so I can focus on flavour and not have so much of that whiskey heat that you might get. First, straight on the front of the palate, I got the smokiness. So almost for a split second there, it was like an Ardbeg across the front of my mouth. But to be honest, it did disappear quickly, dissipated quite quickly, and didn't just lingered a little bit in the back of the palate there, I would say. I would notice, I don't know if you could see that from the cameras, there are some very long legs on this whiskey, so it's dripping right down the side of my whiskey glass there. You know, which says it's got that oily texture and some, you know, I suppose thickness to the whiskey there. It's got some good legs there and a bit of weight there. And you would sort of expect that for 48% whiskey. I mean, probably it's not far off how it would come out of the cask, I imagine, down in Melbourne. It's maybe coming out of the cask at maybe, you know, low 50s, so there's not a lot of water in the whiskey, so you get that more of that oily texture. And I don't, you know, I drink a lot of the Starward Nova. In fact, here in the whiskey library there's always a bottle of Nova open because it's got that unique Australian red wine character. But I just can't pick up that red wine character from this whiskey. So I'm surprised at that. I thought that maybe it would have a little bit more of that character. Look, I think rating wise, I'm going to be a little bit harsh on this whiskey, and I'm just going to give it an 84 out of 100, which, you know, is a little bit disappointing, I think, for a Starward, and certainly for me. I'm a huge fan of the whiskey. For anybody who's seen the whiskey library reviews before, I love the Starward wine cask whiskies, but this one, you know, I think maybe is an experiment. They're probably going to see what the consumer feedback is to see if they'll go and you know, release this as an ongoing SKU line. But I'm just not sure it's going to stack up. So that's an 84 for me. It is a supposedly limited edition, so it may be quite hard to track down. And again, to be honest, it's not cheap. I believe it's retailing for around the $150 mark. So for, you know, it is at least a 700ml bottle, unlike many Australian whiskies, which are the 500ml or less. This one is, you know, a full 700ml, but, you know, you're paying top dollar. But still, look, if you want to taste Australian peated whiskey and you like Starward, get it out there and give it a try. There's no harm in that. This is Rock from the Whiskey Library for MyBottleShop.com. Thank you.